This may be one of the most important episodes that I will ever produce. This is going to be a longer episode, so grab your favorite beverage and put on your comfy clothes and maybe even your headphones and sit back and relax. I've always been a believer that for the most part, that things happen in our lives not by accident or coincidence, as I don't believe in coincidences, but by design. And what I mean by that is that we as humans are controlled first by our own thoughts and desires, or our ego, if you will, and then our reactions or non-reactions to those thoughts and egocentric personal desires. But beyond that, what about the design of those who control society from behind the curtain? Those individuals we have never met and may never meet, who have the power to control societies through mass media propaganda, disinformation, false flag events, and ulterior motives to enslave populations through such forms as legislations, laws, food production and distribution, or lack thereof, our water resources, and even our freedoms to move without encumbrance. I'm talking about a very small entity of people who have a narcissistic God complex, who feel it's their right to control the masses and the direction that humanity will have to abide by if you want to live on this earth. After these past 2 years of the constant fear porn with the death tolls of an illness that has a 99.x survival rate and being restricted from our livelihoods and our lives, for that matter, people turning on each other if they don't follow the science and wear the face diapers, that has been proven time and again by science that they do absolutely nothing to protect one from said illness, or any illness for that matter, but has now been proven to harm people from breathing in the tiny fibers from said masks and our own expelled toxins from our bodies. There's been a constant barrage of, if you don't take the experimental concoction, you want to kill my grandma. Really? Are humans so gullible to believe everything that is reported without doing their own research? I say yes. Have we become so weak-minded that we actually believe the powers that be have our best interest in mind? Are we in fact experiencing a dark night of the soul on a massive scale and in unison? Hey, Dark Side crew, welcome back to the Dark Side of the Human Condition. I am your host, Freya, and if you're new here, we're glad that you found us, and welcome. Here on the Dark Side, we dive deep into the abyss in each episode, and it's my hope that here you'll find some answers to many questions relating to that shadow side of our lives, what it is, how do we learn to incorporate it in our lives on a level that we can not only understand it, acknowledge it, and even use these experiences in constructive ways to enhance our lives going forward. As always, it is recommended to use the information found in these episodes as a starting point for conducting your own research. And please do your due diligence before making any significant life-altering decisions. Remember, this material is not meant for everyone, so if you're not a critical thinker, or you're easily triggered when someone speaks of things you don't agree with, now is the time to go find your tribe elsewhere. For our like-minded peeps, I invite you to find your crew at our home on tdsothc.com or wherever you get your podcast fix on, because we are everywhere. And as always, for more info on sponsorship, and possibly to be a guest on future episodes. We'd love to hear from you, so visit our site and drop us an email. And if you find our content relevant, tap that subscribe button so you'll always know when a new episode is uploaded. Let's explore together and find some of the elusive answers to some of our many dark human conditions and concerns. So with that, let's dive in. So for the past couple of years, things have become extremely uncertain, unbelievable, and yes, even scary at times. That's true. Many people have found themselves in a state of confusion, panic, and major depressions as their lives that they'd come to know as their reality have begun to unravel. And they haven't a clue how to get back to that normal state of being. Was there ever real normal? I don't know. Then there are those who haven't a clue as to what the hell's really going on and coming down the pike. And they believe that we made it through to the other side and that everything is fine now. But is it? In a time of such chaos and confusion, we ask over and over, what the hell is going on? Is it just me? Or has the whole world gone stark raving mad? I believe, as I've stated prior, that the world is going through a global pandemic, which is a war of the mind and the body of humanity, a mass psychosis, a dark night of the soul. The term dark night was made popular in the 16th century by St. John of the Cross, a Spanish monk, in one of his poems, Noche Oscura, which means dark night in Spanish. The poem describes his spiritual journey and the hardships that he faced in his union with God. I highly recommend you read it for deeper introspect of the term. So how might we recognize some possible signs that we may be experiencing a dark night of the soul episode? Well, experts believe that you may be feeling lost, unsure where you should be going or what you should be doing at your life, at this moment. Your relationships may be falling apart. Your career may be crashing for numerous reasons. And you just don't seem to give a damn about anything anymore. During this period, you may feel empty, depressed, lost, even lonely, as everything seems meaningless, a shell of your former self. You might experience unexpected crying jags for no apparent reason, as well as sudden anxiety and panic attacks. You may also find yourself reliving past memories and childhood events seem to be surfacing on a regular basis. There's no meaning to life and nothing makes sense anymore, is what it really bottoms out at. You simply don't know who you are or what you want from this life. Unfortunately, some people have fallen so deep that they've chosen to opt out and have committed to the ultimate tragic decision, as they just couldn't bear the new way of existing that has been thrust upon us from those few in power. It's as if we've been in the eye of the storm and we're seeking for a glimpse of the dawn, a new day, a way through the nightmare as unscathed as possible. What does this mean, you ask? Well, we're going to break it down for you today with a very special guest who can help us shed some light on this subject and, of course, some possible remedies to our current situation. Our special guest today is Miss Sara.hallber. She's a holistic life coach who works with people ready to uncover and deepen their soul's mission. Sara's natural interest is human behavior, and a quest to ease her own suffering led her to learn mindfulness. NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, as well as somatic, energetic, and spiritual modalities and principles. The more she learned and implemented in her life, the more her life transformed with a newfound thirst for life. The last 2 years, it's become more evident for Sara that what we're being presented with is the opportunity to take stock in all areas of our lives where we're out of alignment with our soul. Those who are heeding the call are who Sara works with to break the cycle of self-censorship, self-sabotage, and to stop waiting for a hero to come and save us, and step into who we truly are, what we're here to create and embody in our soul. Sara believes that the future of humanity and the new earth relies on all of us to become who we're meant to be. Welcome, Sara, to our little corner of the universe. I'm excited to be sharing the mic with you today to examine a topic that I find extremely fascinating, the dark night of the soul. But first, tell us a little about you and what you're working on in this stage of your journey.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. And I'm super excited to be here and have this conversation with you. And where I'm at right now and in my journey and what I'm working on, I have a coaching business that I'm really kind of, because it's also parallel to my own journey and my own growth. And that's really what I love about coaching, is more to become a vessel, if you will, about whatever I'm going through, to turn around and be able to help people just a few steps behind. And that behind doesn't mean that worse and better or ahead or not. It's just that whatever chapter I have just embarked on and sort of got some insights is what I then can kind of turn around and offer maybe what that brought me. And that could be, anywhere from a couple weeks of something that I work on to like a few years where that finally something shifts and we provide or able to see a different perspective that we then can provide to others that might be working.
And how did you get on this? How did you get on this particular journey that you're working with people right now, coaching?
Well, that's a really good question, and I think it does tie into a bit of what we're going to talk to today about, like this dark night of the soul.
Awesome.
So I think that's really, I don't know if you want to just dive in right there, right now.
Well, it sounds amazing. And as we go, definitely we'll bring up more information on it. And I've heard that the dark night of the soul is kind of like a death, but I believe what it actually is dying is our ego. So I call it the DNS. So if I say DNS, that's what we're talking about. How can our audience relate to it, what we've been living through these past several years? Like, I feel like more people are not aware that that's exactly what they've been going through, because for years we've been living through ego. Like, I want to buy this, I want this new car, I want this big house. But yet in the last couple of years, with everything that we've been going through, all of that is crumbling. People are losing their homes, losing their jobs, losing everything. Like, everyone's going through it all at once. And it's been really scary. But I feel like most people don't really realize that this is their dark moment. So how can people relate to it that aren't even familiar with what we've been going through?
Yeah, I think that's just it. Because usually the way, I see the dark night of the soul, it's more or less life showing you where you are not being true to yourself, where you're not
I would agree,
aligned with your soul, right? Where we just been so conditioned, and this goes back to our childhood, to where we really start this betrayal of the self.
Conditioning.
Because and conditioning and this betrayal. So what happens, say there is a situation in our home, and this is also something that I think a lot of people have a hard time embracing. A lot of people say, well, I had a really good childhood. And I'm like, sure you did. But there's going to be moments where we had to sacrifice our needs to have our needs met within whether it be school or the home.
Especially those who were raised spoiled. And maybe they were an only child and the world was at their feet. And now the world's at no one's feet except for the elite of the elite, which I hate to call them elite because there's nothing elite about them. But those people are still fine. It's the ones who were given everything, but now as they're grown up and having to fend for themselves and maybe still have it pretty good. But this last couple years, maybe they've reevaluated, hey, the world doesn't owe me a living. And now here we are. So.
Yeah, exactly. That's just it. That's a really good point because there's no thing as like ideally there's an ideal childhood, but in reality that's not the case because it could really be the fact it could be as small, and that's there's big T traumas, which is really what we think about having a traumatic upbringing, right? Where there's some sort of severe abuse or neglect, like emotional or physical, right? Sexual, all that kind of stuff. But there's the little T traumas where it could really be someone saying, hey, Mom, look at this beautiful drawing I did. And they say, I don't have time.
Right.
In that moment, that little part of you is that, feels insignificant, doesn't feel heard, doesn't feel seen. Your needs aren't met. Or on the other side that you bring up, there can be this over kind of, oh my goodness, you are the most brilliant child. And you are going to, where there is really...
I'm guilty. I'm guilty of doing that with my children. I think we're all guilty to a certain level. If you, really love your kids and you want to see them succeed and you want the world to actually be their oyster, if you will, for lack of a better way of saying it. But then as they get older and they feel like betrayed, Mom, you lied to me. Like the world isn't bowing down to all of my needs on a daily basis. So yeah. And here's the question I have too, as far as, are we born with the ego, and is our journey to tear down the ego as we become more connected through years of engaging and finding ourselves in where we might fit in this world? And some of us never find where we fit. And because if you think about a baby, like they cry, you give them the bottle. So they are learning that if I do these things, then I get what I need. So, but yet a baby has no consciousness of what that really is. They just are instinctive that if I scream, I get my bottle or I get my hugs or whatever. So it's so confusing to me that we are born with it before we even know what it is. And then as we grow, we start to understand what it is and we start to use that on the world. And then at some point, the world is not responding back and you're thinking, wait a minute, all I had to do before was scream and get what I want. And now that's not working anymore. So that is a pivotal moment, I think, in our lives where we realize we're not alone. Everyone has needs. It's just who's going to get theirs met at what time. So.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that, the way, I see it is that really that dark night of the soul moment, if you will, or moments, compounded moments. It's really where we start to take back that piece of that responsibility, right? Where we have put it, we put that blame on, our spouse and our children and our employer and the economy and our neighbor that,
until we have to look in that mirror, the universal mirror, right?
Exactly. And it's typically not I'd say the first part. I say that's more the consequence. I say the first part is really just this tearing down of everything that we saw, how we saw ourselves in the world, how we saw the world around us. And there's kind of a way where that start. So here, you know, what's currently going on, I think a big catalyst for the dark night of the soul to kind of come on for people has maybe been people that have really trusted the pharmaceutical industry, right?
Correct.
Like, there's,
Correct.
You know, why, you know, the medical industry is there to protect us, to keep us healthy, to care for us, kind of thing. And, you know, now there probably is a lot of people that are just starting to see, and, you know, I think they even started 2 years ago with this weird, you know, it's very odd behavior, and a lot of people were like, hey, this doesn't really add up. And now I think, you know, we're going to get the second wave, the people that have really kind of toed the line, because, you know, why would the government lie to us? Why would the pharmaceutical people not be, you know, having our best interest at heart, that kind of thing.
Right.
And there's something in their external environment that if they didn't see it for the past 2 years, then now might see it, right? Because they know, you know, they see firsthand.
Number 4.
Their cousins, yeah, exactly.
Number 4. I'm just
yeah,
like, wait,
right?
what? Number 4?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I have had a distrust for years because I've seen what they've done to family members of mine, and my family members, I won't say who it is, but loved very much and brokenhearted when I watched the system kill them. And I tried to open their eyes as to what was going on, but of course it's, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not in the medical system. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You know, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. And then I was left with like the worst broken heart ever. And so that has just pushed my journey even more. That was my darkest night. I've had a couple of them, but this particular person in my life, when they passed so young and there was nothing I could do about it, I literally crashed and burned and didn't give a damn about anything anymore ever again. And that's probably why I'm here doing what I'm doing now, much like you doing what you're doing. My thought was, I have a voice and I have all of these thoughts and knowledge that was just in me. And it was exploding. It was trying to get out, saying, let me out. Let me tell the world. But I find a lot of the world really doesn't care, you know, what we have to say or what, you know, what we're doing. I find that most of them don't care because, again, it's that ego thing. Am I bringing it out through my ego? Do I feel like what I have to say is so important that my ego has taken over and taken me on this journey? Maybe, but not really. Not really. It's a way of saying, I was here, and this is what I experienced on this particular journey. Whether or not we have multiple lives, I don't really know. I'd like to think so, but I was here, and this is my story, and I want to share my story with like-minded, you know, those who understand and who get it. So that was my dark night, and so I think that is what has brought me here to doing the podcast. So, yeah,
that's beautiful. And I think that you hit on this crash and burn really stood out to me. You know, this crash and burn kind of moment, because that is the initiation, right? Like the initiation to because crash and burn is typically it's something external to you that you're or something that you're facing within yourself, that you come to a certain breaking point where, like, this pattern can't continue, this behavior can't continue, I can't keep going that way. And we get to a point where, and more so that can be that internal, where it's like me, right? Or external, there's something happening external to us. And then we have that choice point. Some people don't see it as the dark night of the soul, and they just become jaded. They become jaded, they become extra, double down on the fact that they have to just kind of only fend for themselves, and the world's shit, and it's everybody's fault even more than it was before, right? But then, so that's one side, and the other side is this deeper inner being of us that wants to make itself known and heard
Yes.
and connected with, and to have that part guide us more. And typically that does come with some sort of isolation period where we really have to disconnect from our social circles, our work, whatever. Some people, you still have to go to work, right? So, but then you take the time in the evenings and weekends, or there's just this isolation, or like the hermit in tarot, right? Like this
Yes.
inward kind of part of the journey that we need to go on, because this is where we really stop and reflect and be like, okay, what's me and what's conditioned? How I experience this.
Well, I feel like
where does that stem from, right?
Yeah, and the past 2 years, especially, when this episode all started, I think it gave people a chance to be with themselves. And it was scary. And I went through it more or less on my own, since I live alone, which was fine. I didn't have to be bothered with anyone. I was alone with my thoughts. And this is kind of when I started doing what I'm doing. But then there's those who have family or significant other that they lived with. And now I hear the divorce rate and the breakup rate is just off the charts, because I feel those people had to really face themselves, face their demons. The person that they were with, maybe they said, oh, I love you, and maybe they got married or moved in or whatever, and then boom, everything happened. And then they realized after a month or two in lockdown, they're like, I don't think I like this person. So, and then it gets to a point where I don't think I like myself. Like, oh God, and I'm trapped, So I feel like this has been, I guess you could look at it as there's benefits to everything. And this one, it had some bad things, but I think that a lot of people had to be forced to get in touch with themselves and with their relationships around them, be it in their own home or family or friends, and the isolation. You can come out of the isolation a better person, hopefully, or you come out of it and say, I'm not doing that anymore. None of that made any sense. And this is the direction I feel I need to go going forward. So who I feel the worst for, though, is the children. I feel like the children who got caught in that situation had no idea what life was even about to begin with. And now they were stuck in a home, say maybe with abusive parents or all kinds of craziness, and they have no control. And then they were locked out of schools and they were on the computers, and that's never going to really be the same, especially when they're just learning. They need that social interaction with other children. I feel like they need to see faces. Like when I go somewhere and I'm kind of forced to have it on for a moment, say if it's in a store or whatever, and you're looking at these little babies and they're looking at you, toddlers, like, how come I only see half of a face? But at home, they might see their parents' whole face, and then they're out in the world and they only get to see half a face. And I personally have boycotted places that demand that you wear it. Because I feel like if we all just live our lives and not pay attention to what's trying to be demanded, then we just go about our life. But then you got other people who are like, nope, you must comply. You must do what the elders tell us, and it's frustrating because you want to help them, but in your own way, you're like, no, that's not my journey. And where do you cut that line? Where do you find that you have to pull back and say, that is not your journey to tell someone else how they should feel or what they should or shouldn't be doing? Like, where do you draw the line on that?
That's a really good question. And I do feel like that is a paramount part of the dark night of the soul, because as you go through this, after the isolation, what then emerges is more this true authentic self and your conscious self and your higher a more of a connection with your higher self and a higher perspective on how this world works. And this higher perspective on how this world works, I think is really, really, really key. Because without it, these last 2 years, you'd be ragdolling. You'd be, all over the place. And I get still caught in it. It's not like I'm above it all the time, but I know what I want myself to pull back to. And that is the knowing that we all come here, the way I see it, we come here as these spiritual beings to have a human experience, to have certain journeys, certain lessons, some things that we're going to go through. And I cannot control what that is for anybody else, but my job in my journey and on the other side of this dark night of the soul, where I can see what's conditioning, what's programming, what's a limiting belief or a trauma response to something, because especially if you have a really visceral reaction to something, it's your nervous system kicking in, putting you in a fight, flight, or even a freeze or a fawn response.
Right, so you're just reacting.
It's external threat.
Yes.
Right? So, and that can be a shutdown response too. It doesn't have to be an
aggressive
response, right? You can be shut down, which is more the freeze, and the fawn is the people pleasing. That's when we just swallow, we just agree, we just become small.
Go along to get along.
Right? Yeah. So those, but you just come aware. It doesn't mean they just stop happening. It's just more you become aware and be like, wow, that was a powerful freeze response. Right? Like, so, and then you can work through it, and eventually you release, and eventually you'll be in a situation that would have triggered you in the past that doesn't anymore. And that's when you know you've done enough of the work, that you're having now a different experience. And you're no longer then an energetic match to that, because every time that comes into your reality,
yes, it's the energy, right?
It's for you. It's coming up to show where you are resonating with that. And that's typically on the polar opposite side, but it's coming up to reveal what's in you that's ready to be released. And if we can approach it like that, so if I get very triggered by someone who, standing on their soapbox,
there's been a lot of that.
Of course.
I'm like, oh my, I don't even like social media anymore. I'm sick of it. It's just become a battleground where it used to be light and fun and happy and stupid joke memes and whatever, just something to waste 5 minutes, right? But now every time you're on it, you're just like, you come off there feeling like, oh, just close this account. I'm just done with it. Because I personally have tried, at least over the past year, to eliminate negativity. I used to go along with everyone else, post everything that came out that I felt people need to know. And I'm like, but people don't care. They've come out and said, I don't care. I don't want to see your political post. I don't care what's going on. And my side is right, and you don't know what you're talking about. It was just all this negative. So now it's just like, I don't even care. I might go on and catch up on some real news and push propaganda to the side, because I'm aware and awake and I get it. So I can decipher where I find most people cannot decipher. And so they're falling into it, right? They're like, oh my God. So.
Yeah, this discernment, this is what this is exactly this too.
That's the word.
Huge lesson in discernment. And that is really the initiation to an authentic life, to the spiritual life, to, what is conditioning, what is propaganda, what is all this stuff, right? And versus what is true. Because truth is really one of these tricky things, that in some ways we've been conditioned to be like, there's your truth, my truth. There's no thing as like a real truth,
an absolute truth.
Yeah,
but there really is.
Exactly. Because it's both, right?
Yeah,
it's both.
It's what you think is true may not be true, but yet there is an absolute truth that whether or not we choose to acknowledge it and agree with it, it's still the truth.
Yeah, exactly. And it's going to be harder for us. The denser we are, the more we're the harder, the less we can discern.
Yes.
The harder it will be for us to decipher what is actually true, because we're too triggered, we're too conditioned to believe in narratives and can't really peel it apart. So that is really when you...
It's that ego. The ego does not want to be wrong, nor challenged.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, the ego does not want to accept a challenge. It's not, it's not what it's trying to do. And I feel personally that I used to live only through ego a long time ago. When I was younger and hotter and whatever, it was all about ego. And now as I'm older, I'm thinking none of that really mattered, because even 100 years from now, no one will really know our names if we don't do something, you know, exorbitantly noteworthy, let's say. We didn't write the masterpiece or something, but it doesn't really matter. But what I was saying before was, I'm here. I was here. Whether or not it mattered to many or any, I was here for a reason. I may not know today what that reason is. I may never know what my reason was for being here, but there is a conversation I had with my dad that it reminded me of, is that we have such a minuscule, beyond minuscule chance of ever existing in this earth. It took the right parent, the right moment, the right time, and the right other parent to come together at that exact moment for our conception. And it had they missed that moment, it would have been a different egg and, you know, different sperm and whatever. So we have such a minute chance of actually being here that I feel that if you are here, you truly are here for some reason, whether or not it's a person who's, I don't know, living on the street and they're homeless and they feel like they have nothing to offer the world, but they do have something to offer the world. We just have to stop and take notice of why their situation is the way it is. Why are they living on the street? What could we possibly do to help that person help themselves? So
yeah, well, and I think that's just it. Exactly. It's this, and it kind of ties back to this whole, you know, how, do we let people just sleep? It's this idea, this balance, right, of realizing that people have their own contracts, their own, they're the ultimate authority on their life. So, you know, that combines them with the earthly decisions that you make and whatever soul journey you kind of contracted to before you came here to experience. That's my belief. And also not to undermine our ability to plant seeds, to speak truth, to shine light on bullshit, on untruth, on corruption, on propaganda, but do it from, I think, where we do get caught. So, for example, if it's a homeless man living on the street, or if it's, you know, more this kind of shining light on the pandemic kind of stuff.
Right.
It's this idea that if I approach that homeless person or an argument online, or not even argument, but trying to voice my opinion, my view, my from a perspective that I need to get that person off the street, or I need to convert this person. Now you're in a loose, like you are.
Now you're ego based.
Actually coming, exactly. You're not coming from a place of sheer, true self-expression, speaking from your soul. You have an agenda, and your agenda is
altruism. Was that the word you were looking for? Altruism.
Yes, that's the one. Exactly.
Right.
So, and it doesn't matter if that's the person, because if that person's homeless on the street, like you say, if they're not ready to face what brought them there,
right?
They're going to just repeat that cycle if I just pull them out of the street. But if that time is right, that person's ready, and someone shows up in their life at the right time,
right,
that combination can be hugely transformative. So it's not to undermine that we don't have the power to impact other people's lives, but it can't be our motive.
Sure.
Our motive has to be
to
live our highest, and our highest is to be, and part of our highest is to be fully self-expressed.
Correct. And that's why the
not from ego, right?
The censorship lately, like
ego,
it's out of control. Let's control what everybody's saying, doing, and it's going to come down to thought police and, oh, you thought the wrong thing. I saw something on, what was it? Something online the other day, where this person was thinking against the narrative, and they were going to be arrested. It was a parody, but I was like, okay, so they're programming me. That's coming down the road. You're not going to be allowed to think anything you want, do anything you want. Like, I have done research for a long time. I had a very awakened father, and my mom, she was the one that said, life is fine. I don't know what you're all worried about. It's good. But my dad was like, no, these are the things that are coming, you know? So he woke me up a long, long time ago, and then he passed in 2010. And now I have so many questions because here it is, everything he talked about. And I'm like, oh God, where are you, Dad? You know, so I just take those lessons and try to use them first for myself. And if they seep out into the universe and affect someone else in a positive way, that's great. And if it never reaches someone else and it just stays here, okay, then that's what it was supposed to be. So,
but also, I don't even think that's possible. I don't think that's because we are, because we are interconnected, you know, in ways. So you know, whether you go more like Jungian, like, you know, psychology based on this collective unconscious, or if you go more
I'm fascinated by that.
You know, that there's all this connected, you know, consciousness, right? Like consciousness can't just be separated. Like you are like the drop in the ocean kind of methodology. Is that the word? Yeah. Yes. But this idea, right, that like you doing your work can't be done in isolation. The work you're doing is directly shifting the collective, and the collective, what's being demonstrated in the collective, what shows up in the collective, is a reflection of all our individual states, and vice versa. That's because when you kind of embrace that as a reality and that as a truth, that there is no, then this whole idea that like I need to go and impact people in a big way, I got to build an empire, la la la.
Ego.
Then you realize Then you realize that is just a way for you to feel significant. But when it's more this realization that whatever work I do, it's like putting it out in the pool and out and forth. And it's actually, there's this really cool
it's like that little kid that pees in the pool. Eventually it's going to be around everybody, right? Whether you wanted to, you could stay in that corner of the pool, but it's coming your way.
Yeah, exactly. There is no isolation. There's also then this, and when we look at it the other way, that what's happening in the external is just a reflection of our own unconscious and our own unwillingness to look at ourselves. That then becomes projected, that we pick it out in other people.
Well, recently,
right? The ones that aren't following, the ones that aren't doing it.
And what you're saying is valid, because recently I was brought back to that frame of thought when I was discussing this past 2 years with someone very close to me. And, you know, I try to let them know things that are going on, because they know what's going on, but they don't do any research because their life is very busy with family and things like that. And I get it. And they said to me, quite honestly, I'm aware and awakened to what is happening, but not every little piece of it can I involve myself in. I just have to live my life. And then whatever's going to happen, hopefully I'm prepared. And if I'm not, then I'm not. And I get it, because they're able to live at peace with their family and their life and continue forward as if none of this is going on, even though they're aware that it's going on. If that's the way they need to deal with it, then who am I to try to force them to deal with it any other way? So I get it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's actually ideally the way that we approach the past, from my perspective, is that we are aware, like we want to research to the point where you can see the whole agenda. You know that this is nothing to do with a pandemic. Right. There's, this is like, so you can, because that's also, then you don't hang by the hopes, like, are the mandates going to listen? Are they not? What's happening next?
Right.
Like, where can I, because you're thinking this is going to be over if this is over, but that's
it's
just
never going to be over.
From the truth. Right, exactly. But then also in that realization, we have to realize that if you're too much into research, there's never going to be an end of rabbit holes. There's never going to be an end in holes you can dive in and the depth of them. So the answers that you're looking for are not going to be found at the end of a rabbit hole. So at some point, we have to turn that inwards and realize that what I'm seeking, what this life is all about, is not to unpack the next move in their evil agenda. But you can see, so now with this war happening, and you can kind of clearly see that it's just another piece in their chess move. And I found myself in a couple of days be like, oh, what's happening? What's going on? Which is part of this agenda, that agenda? And, I got wrapped up for a few days. And then I just okay, you guess what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because I know it's all bullshit. I know there's a bigger plan. Right. So who cares? And that's not where my power lies. My power is not at the bottom of this one rabbit hole that's connected to a gazillion rabbit holes.
And I was going to say this about power, and we as I keep going back to the movie, The Ants. Remember that a couple years back? Mm-hmm. And the head criminal, if you will, said if they ever realize their true power, all the little ants, they will come for us, Yeah. And I think that's kind of symbolic of what is happening right now. We are just the little ants, and we're not organized in our thoughts right now and in our actions, quite honestly, to bring us together. We're still caught in this, if your side and this. It's not about sides, because there really are no sides. That is an illusion that those in power want us to believe that there are sides. And they've been doing this for decades, centuries, maybe even thousands of years. The Egypt's pharaohs and their little ants, and, the slaves, and they made them build the stuff. And so since the beginning of time, it's been them and us, them and us. But then they try to make us feel like we need to be divided by so many variables, be it skin color, be it wages, be it where you live. Like you live in the city and you live in the country mouse, the city mouse. I mean, everything is just so divided. And I think once people get it, that we're not divided and that we all just really want the same thing. We want to be left alone. We want to be able to live our life the way we feel, as long as we're not hurting other people. We want to live a comfortable life, so we don't have to be, diving in dumpsters to eat. We don't want our neighbors to be, less than what we feel would be normal, So I also feel like we culminate with people of like minds, and not everyone has the same minds. And that is the thing that makes us, makes us different, but in a good way. I hate when people say left and right. I've stopped using that. I don't do the leftist thing anymore, the far right. Again, that's labels. It's labeling people. It's creating this illusion of division. So now it's like, well, what do we say? What do we call it? We don't call it anything. It just is what it is. And until we all get on pretty much the same page, nobody wants the nuclear war that they're threatening. Nobody wants to be destitute that they're threatening. No one wants to live in 1984 that is somewhat happening. I don't know. Like, what's the answer? Where do we go?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly, the more time we spend contemplating, like, what's the answer and what's my role? Like, why?
Right.
Like, what are my gifts, my talents, my passions, my what kind of lights me up? What brings me joy? What breaks my heart? To like, because in there kind of lies our path and our pursuit and what we're here to birth and here to change, but we don't change it from within the structure that's here because this whole structure, this whole system, it's all set up perfectly. People are like, oh, the system's broken. I'm like, no, it's not. It's working exactly as designed, right?
Exactly as they planned it.
Yeah, so it's really about, and that's also my thing, a lot of people are like, I'm, a freedom fighter. I'm like, great, but how about if you were just free?
Right.
And like, because you're actually, by saying things like that and trying to take down the system and change the bylaws,
word fighter, right?
And fighter, exactly, that energy, that intention, the actions can actually look very similar, very the same. But it's the energy you're coming from. It's your intention. It's not acknowledging anybody to be an authority over you. Yes, there's certain things that I, abide to.
I've always been a rebel, at heart.
But it's like, I'm not gonna go hurt people or
I don't have a boss.
That, right?
No one tells me what to do.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna answer to laws that aren't even laws. That are just ridiculous because
unjust.
Well, even here, like, arrows on the grocery store, like which aisle to go which way. Every time I go I
do too. I go the opposite direction.
Yeah, because that
people look at you like, are you crazy? You're supposed to go that way. No, you're the crazy one going that way,
Yeah.
And I did the same thing.
Also, and at that point, it's just to be like, also, if you do receive some projections or find yourself judging, it's just an opportunity then to release that. Yes. You're walking that on those arrows the opposite way as a free sovereign being, not as a I'm the rebel and you guys are the sheep, because now you're playing into that division that they're looking to create.
Exactly. So I've tried to soften that up. I really have tried to soften that part of thinking about it. And when it first started, I would walk up to people in the grocery store and say, oh, do you know where I could find? And I'm like, hey, how you doing? And then people would look at you like, oh my God, you're standing right next to me. Oh my God. And I felt so sorry for them because they had such fear in their eyes. And I was like, oh, I just wish I could hug you, And yet they weren't ready for that. But then as time went on, people started to say, hey, someone's talking to me. Yay, So it takes time. And it takes, like you were saying, people have to come to it in their own time. So you can't force it.
And also, but then also realizing that like our actions do ripple, right? So, and this whole idea that like self-censoring, because I see that's the other side. You have people that see what's going on, but they just bite their tongue. They don't use their voice. Like, what am I going to do? I'm just going to rock the boat, and who am I to make a difference? And, so that's
I love rocking the boat, quite honestly. I always have. And I think a lot of people, though, are waiting for someone else to do it. Do you find that?
Well, absolutely. And that's kind of part of it. Like, what am I, like, what difference will it really make if I say something or not? Like, that's not going to make a difference. So I'm just going to shut up. Right?
Right.
They're waiting. They're just, there's other people that are speaking out. Why do I need to? Right? Not realizing that this is an initiation for their soul.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
This isn't, and so if you're on that side, that's the initiation to really own your voice and to face the fear of rejection and abandonment. Yes,
there it is. There it is. No one wants to be rejected.
Yeah, and this is a very primal fear that we have. Like it's part of like our reptilian brain. Like it's really,
I love that
really,
description
really
of that. The primal. I totally 100%. I love that because it really is primal. I feel like we're at the precipice, if you will. I've heard that word used a few times, and I was thinking, what precipice? But now that I have thought about it for a few months, I was like, we really are at a precipice of the extinction of humankind. Or going forward in a whole new way that we have maybe never experienced, where people actually come together and learn to live together and respect each other. And there are some people that don't really care either way. They're just like, whatever, I'm just doing my thing. Okay, if that works for you. You know?
Yeah, but that's maybe that's not their soul calling them. Like if you, and
Right.
that's what I mean. The person that feels that like like this is just I want to speak but I don't. It's like that's the initiation of your soul that then embark on, right?
Right.
And if that fear of rejection and abandonment, that's actually your childhood wounds coming up for you to heal through this catalyst, feeling the need to speak out at this moment, right?
Well, because as a kid, you're always told, shut up, be seen and not heard.
Well, and it can be more. It can be literally deep, like your father was never in your life. And,
right.
like it can be really but and I do like to draw a difference between a limiting belief, a limiting belief being more like be seen, not heard kind of thing. And more of that kind of trauma being more maybe you're coming to your parent in distress and they're saying you should be seen, not heard, as opposed to you're just blah, 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 and you're told. You know what I mean? So it's really very nuanced, very, very nuanced. But if you're in distress and you're not comforted and supported, or, that will register as a trauma, and that will taint everything that you do going forward until you get to kind of like heal that and release that, right?
Well, I feel like there's, I guess the good part is that we are all different, but we're all the same. It's that dichotomy of we're all going through the same experience, but we're all experiencing it differently. So how can we identify the dark night of the soul, an episode, if you will, because I think people can go through many through their lifetimes, but how can they identify that they're going through that versus, say, just a normal, if it is normal, depression episode? Like, is there major differences that you feel people can relate to, like, oh, this is something bigger than I've ever experienced, or, oh, I'm just depressed again, nothing's going right? Like, what are some of the differences you think?
Well, I think that depression is the attempt of a dark night of the soul. That
interesting.
It's your, because the depression is also your soul trying to talk to you and say, hey, like, something's off.
Okay.
But we don't really have, and that's unfortunately why a lot of people wait for this external pressure, right, to get to a point where we now have to look at ourselves.
So you feel it's a culmination of smaller depression episodes that could eventually lead to the big event?
Yeah, because typically, it could be, right? It could be. And we can feel, it's not to feel that, I think that's maybe a whole other episode in itself, but this idea that,
I got a feeling you'll be back, Sarah. I think you'll be back.
Yeah, all be like roses, we should all be happy all the time. Like, that's something we need to just kibosh, because that's not life, right? And this illusion that we should never feel sad or struggle or frustrated or overwhelmed is actually what's the culprit, more than that we're not happy, right? So then we can get caught up in this kind of thinking that something's wrong with us, when it's really we just need to embrace the fact that we're human, and human comes with a shit ton of stuff, right? So that can be depression, just this resistance to what is trying to emerge.
Resistance, there's that word.
Yeah, like it's something, right? But then we're typically not self-aware enough to know where it's trying to direct us, or what it's trying to reveal. And we haven't, and self-awareness, part of that is realizing that we're not our emotions, we're not our thoughts, right? That we just get so identified with that we can't observe them, we can't look at them as if it's just an event that's happening. It's like we are it, right? And this is also where that higher perspective that I mentioned, there's many higher perspectives that this journey can give us when we embark on it. And one is that, like, whatever's happening to us, it's happening for us. Like this, even a depression, like, what is it that's wanting to come through here? What is it that is wanting waiting for me to be shown? And do I have the courage to feel the discomfort, to lean into it, as opposed to
wasn't that the whole premise of St. John of the Cross, the Spanish monk who, in his poetry, in particular the Noche Oscura, is that how they say it? Anyway, his spiritual journey, and he had a lot of hardships going on when he faced his union, if you will, with God. And so that makes me think that, what about the people who don't believe in God or have any connection with a higher power, if you will? Where can they begin to connect with their soul? Because I think sometimes I've struggled with this over the years, like many times. I am a person who thinks very scientifically, and it's black or it's white. It is or it isn't. It's proven or disproven scientifically. So I have always been forced, being raised as a Catholic, to believe in what your parents said and took you to church and blah, blah, blah. So I never, even as a kid, felt that connection. And I spoke about this in one of my other episodes, where I'm going to do a whole episode on religion, just not there yet. So for those who struggle with the notion of a guy in the sky, a higher power, something connecting us all, how can they begin to connect with their soul on a level that can bring them through such a time as a dark night? How do they do that?
Well, yeah, I think that's the initiation of a dark night of the soul, right? And part of that is also realizing that why we might not consider ourselves religious or spiritual, or have, very like nihilistic in our views. What is to realize, though, that you still believe in something.
You could be spiritual. I believe you could be spiritual.
Outside of that, but even outside of that, say that you don't believe in anything. So you're going to then
totally agnostic,
in
right?
Pharmaceuticals. You're going to believe in, that's what's going to save us. You're going to believe in government. You're going to believe in climate change action. You're going to believe in all these other aspects where you have put somewhat of a savior role, somewhat of a hero, or this idea that there's something bigger than you that you are getting behind.
Well, you must have to believe in something in order to get out of bed every day. I always thought that, in order for you to keep getting up, there's something that keeps waking you up, something you believe in to keep bringing you, out of your cave every day, and whatever that is. But I find personally that there are people who just can't really get behind it, and I can identify with a lot of what they say, because I have, like I said, been on both sides of that fence many times, back and forth through life. I'm thinking, how did all this get here? There must be some supreme being that put all this together and makes our body work like a computer until it doesn't, and our brain think and communicate and analyze until it doesn't. But what is the whole point of any of this, since we all just die anyway? That is my biggest question. What are we going through all this for, if in the end we all just die anyway? So,
well, and I think that's the first part there is realizing like where you have put your beliefs, and then deciding where you want to put them. You know what I mean? Like, and part of that, like, quantum physics and stuff like that. Like, but physics and spirituality.
Science. I love science. Right? Yep. I absolutely love science.
So if that's, your boat, then for sure, like, if there needs to be those kind of like quantum entanglement theory and all these really, really cool stuff, like there's stuff out there that can really blow your mind and open your mind in ways that like maybe they haven't been opened before. But part of that is also realizing, like, why are we here and why are we going through all this? It's like you have the freedom to choose whatever you want to think about that. You know what I mean? And it's like you can choose to believe it's all for nothing and we're all gonna die and who gives a shit? That's one, like you have the freedom to choose that, but what makes you feel most...
I just want to know, why do we go through everything we go through just for one day? It's cut off and that's it. And I'm like, but why? Why does it have to? Why can't we just keep on living, like, and go on and on? Why do we have to just one day? And some people are just getting started and boom, it's over. Like what?
Yeah.
Say a 2-year-old, has a brain tumor, and like, what was their point of being here? What? Was it a lesson for their parents? Was it a soul that came into the wrong body at the wrong time? Like, so many questions.
So this is, I think there's a lot of questions, but the beautiful thing there is that you can make it mean whatever you want. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm kind of trying to say.
I just want to know the truth. I just want to know the reason.
But this is kind of where, I guess, if we could raise our consciousness to a point where we really stripped away absolutely everything that with our condition, maybe we could see that truth as the capital truth, where we just know that what that truth is. But in this 3D body, and where I am at on my journey, I still see truth a lot through my perception, right? Mm-hmm. So, but the way I see that, it's that there's no wrong body. Like, it's not like that, say the 2-year-old, it's not like that was wrong. That was what was supposed to happen because it happened. Like it's just this...
but that's where I feel a lot of people have issues with God. Amongst many others, like war and famine and disease and stuff. And yes, I agree, a lot of what we go through, maybe 98% of it is man-made. I believe a lot of diseases are man-made. Whether someone chooses to agree with me or not, that's fine. I really don't care. Mm-hmm. That is my belief, that I believe we create our own destruction on a daily basis. But for a baby to come into this world and not get to really be here to make an impact, or maybe their impact, we don't really know. Like I say, maybe it was on the parents or whatever, but that's what a lot of people have issues with. And I know that people say, well, if you don't believe in God, you're probably into Marxism and blah, blah, blah. And there's all those isms, No, why can't I just have questions? Without,
of course.
Without you throwing me into some group that I don't want to be in, like what, why can't I just be curious? And why can't I express that curiosity and expect to find an answer that is valid? One of my favorite classes in college was, social, what's that? Gosh, I can't think of it. Social
studies?
No, that was high school. It's basically social something. It's basically how the world works. And we had the coolest professor. She would come in her jeans and her biker jacket. And it totally wasn't her, but that was day one. And she said, a lot of things are about perception and how you view it, and where you got your reasons for viewing it the way you did was all a culmination of things that you were programmed to believe in coming up. And now here you are looking at me in jeans and whatever, but I could really be a suit wearing, whatever outside of here, but you would never know that because you're seeing me in my leather jacket. And so, it really is about perception. But she said, there's a formula for truth and lies, and it looks like a tic-tac-toe. So truth plus truth equals truth. Truth plus lie equals what was the third one on that one? And then lie plus lie equals lie. But there's something in the middle there, and I forgot that one. But it goes along with that perception thing. Truth will always be truth, no matter what. No matter, even if you put a lie with it, it's still going to come out to be true in the end anyway. And a lie will always be a lie, and the truth will expose that lie. So
well, exactly. And that's how I see it too, right? Like, it's this you know, if you look at it more like light and dark, like truth being light and dark being light, right?
Right.
And you can't make light dark, really. You know what I mean? Yes, you can extinguish that light, but that is very forceful, right?
Right.
But you can't have darkness creep in on light. But you just need one light in a dark room to light it up.
Right. It's that one candle thing. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Truth is just way more potent of a frequency. And when we also realize that there's this scale of consciousness, a scale of frequencies of different vibrations that they vibrate at, they have different speeds, and lies are very dense. They're very dense, and truth is a very high frequency. So it just can't exist in the same realm.
Right.
So that's why you need this propaganda and the brainwashing and the conditioning and all this subliminal bullshit on TV and radio and everywhere.
Yes. And they actually made propaganda legal. Wasn't that under the Obama administration? Where
I'm sure
he passed a law to make it legal. You know, that it was
done it way before that, even if it wasn't
right,
legal.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of this has been coming on for so long, and I don't care what people think about Trump and his administration. I don't care what they feel he's done or not done or could have done or would have done. I feel like at the very least, and he did do a lot of good, and I'll defend that to the end of my days. He did do a lot of good for the country. But beyond that, I feel like he woke a lot of people up that were sleeping and enjoying their slumber, and life is good as long as I got my rent paid and food on the table. Don't mess it up, you know. But I feel like he enlightened a lot of people to what's really been going on. So he ignited that light, that candle, that fire, and now it's a movement.
A lot of people on their inside too, the people that were really, really triggered by him. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
That, you know, like, and that was part of his role, was to bring that to the surface so we could heal it, right?
Yes.
Like, what is, you know, like that kind of, and really like personify.
Right now we're triggering
America.
Lots of people listening, I'm sure.
Yeah. But
and
like,
it's okay. It's going to be all right.
In this, you know, very like, you know, narcissistic in the sense of like, me, I did that, I'm the best, you know, very successful, very much money, very like boasty. So that's a deep a shadow of America, right? So that brings up, you know, the people then that, you know, typically be on the left that's really like just owned a lot of that, right? That really feel like there's a lot of shame, a lot of like they're not proud to be American because of this, right?
Right.
Those kind of traits. So yeah, no, and I think that's just it. If we can arrive at a place, whether it be the 2-year-old or a Trump, you know, like with the tumor or whatever, right? Like this kind of place where we can just see that like everything does serve a purpose. And yeah, that 2-year-old might not, you know, leave a huge, you know, legacy in terms of the, you know, something tangible, but the legacy that child left on their parents and those around them. And yes, it might be sorrow, it might be grief, but who's to say that that's not what they need to go to get on their path?
Oh my God, I just had an epiphany when you said that, Sarah. Oh my God. Yes, I totally got it now. What I considered like to be something horrible and tragic, and the 2-year-old and the tumor and the whatever, and then the outcome on the people around the 2-year-old and where the direction that sends them in, that happened to me. I just had that epiphany, losing this close, let's say, family member 5 years ago. And it caused me to crash and burn because they were young and they had so much life ahead of them. And I tried to save them from themselves. And so when I couldn't save them from themselves, some of it had to do with their own behavior and some of it was physical ailment. So when I couldn't save them and they passed anyway, my whole life hit the ground, like I said, and I didn't want to get up. I almost couldn't get up. I had people in my life saying, you need to come stay with me till you can get through this, blah, 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 you know. But I was like, no, I actually need to just be alone. I need to be alone in my misery and suffer. And I did something to bring this on. So I was going into a really dark place, like where I didn't want to live anymore. I was that dark. And I don't know what kept me going other than one other individual in my life. And if that other person wasn't here on this earth, I really don't think I could have lived 1 minute longer. And that's the honest truth. And I've never felt like that about anyone or anything in my life, that I just kept on going through life, you know, and whatever happens, happens. And yeah, I've lost people that I loved and whatever. But when this particular person left, I couldn't make sense of anything anymore. So, like you said, what does that person do when that 2-year-old is gone? What direction are they going in? That happened to me. So here I am, you know, like I took all of the information of a lifetime of learning and I brought it forth into what I like to call a truth cast, because I just want to share truth with people. I mean, some people will reject it. Some people will think, oh, she's crazy, you know, whatever. But it's my truth. And isn't that all that really matters, is your truth? Like, if you believe it, you believe it. And whatever brought you to that moment of believing it, there you are, you know?
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Like, thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, you're
oh my
so
God.
And because there's also, there's this notion, like when we suffer, right, is this notion that we knew better than the universe, than God,
right?
Than, you know, like that we, like I am the, because this is kind of like my little beef with the kind of the new age stuff, right? Like you create your own reality, and you know you're the creator, you're creator.
Yes
and no. Yes, you are, absolutely. We constantly manifest, good or bad or whatever, based on our perception, our consciousness, our intentions, all that. But we are also, I am not the ultimate creator of this plane. I don't know your destiny. I don't know your soul contract. I don't know what you came here to do. Like, and this, when we are really deep in that suffering, where we say this should not have happened, this should, and then we're just suffering so deeply, we're essentially saying, I know how the world should work, and it's wrong.
Right. I agree.
And we have 8 billion people on this planet.
Coming back to ego, full circle, right?
Yeah. This idea that I know how this should have gone and this is wrong. And this is also what I come back to here, what's happening the last 2 years. Like, who's to say this is wrong? You know, with people that are you know, so frustrated with the lockdowns and all these things and mandatory. And I'm like, bring it. Bring it. This is clearly what we need as humanity, to start to question things, to start to see things, to start to take our power back, to become really sovereign and you know, the ultimate authority on our life. And this is that pressure cooker that society has now brought us, so that we can come back to ourselves.
Pressure cooker. I love it. Great analogy. Yeah. That is awesome.
And if we then think that this shouldn't be happening the way it is, we will suffer greatly. But that doesn't mean we can't use our voice to shine light on, because this is like, we wouldn't be where we are today either if we only relied on the mainstream news, right? Like, we need people to like show things the way they see it, and like, this doesn't add up. But we're not doing it from a place that this shouldn't be happening and this is wrong, and we need to fix this from a place of like this kind of place. And we can have there's such a thing as sacred and righteous anger, and it can motivate us, but we want to be careful to not get stuck in there.
Well, do you feel like a lot of people are still in a bubble, you know, meaning they don't really see what's going on around them, and they probably never will at this point, if they're still in the bubble now, after everything we've seen and experienced over the last 2 years specifically, but 50 years since the assassination of President Kennedy.
Yeah.
is when I feel like things really kicked into gear. Like really kicked into gear. And we still were sleeping. We didn't really understand. We just thought, well, some crazy person, you know, killed our president, and that's really sad. And we went back to sleep, you know, and then something else happens. Oh, that's really bad. But I think now, if you are still in a bubble at this point, there's no saving you. There's no waking you up. There's no redemption, right?
I don't think that it's like will be too late for, you know, I think anyone can wake up at any point, but the density of which there is to wake up from, and the hypnosis of everything, not just these, you know, these last 2 years, but of everything that you don't want to look at, the density of your shadow.
Well, yeah, for sure, because there's a dark side to it, right? A very dark side. And I feel like there's spells.
For that to break, it's going to become increasingly harder to break out of it. And I don't think that not everyone is meant to wake up, and, you know, whether you know believe in ascension or not, it's a form of ascension even to break out of your own former denser self, right? Whether it's a collective ascension or, you know, whatever views are on that, but even to do that, not everyone's meant to do that in this lifetime. And that's, you know,
I feel like they'll be the cannon fodder, right?
Cannon fodder?
Fodder, you know, the cannon fodder. The ones who either by choice or by ignorance, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, just their own lack of knowledge and their own resistance to wake up. So I feel like they are the cannon fodder in the war of our soul, you know, the war of our minds. I feel like we're really in a war of our minds.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's it's our mind and our soul ultimately. But the mind is the gateway to the soul. Because if you can control the mind, you can control the soul. And it's absolutely, you know, I don't know how deep you've gone in your podcast, but, you know, out there, but this
just bring it
of our life force energy is what they feed off of, right?
Yes.
And
I agree.
The mind is just a way that they trap the soul, and now with these injections, I do feel that is a very pivotal moment for your soul journey.
I do too.
I do feel like it's very much that if you make that choice, you have more or less sold your soul.
I feel like recently I've seen a lot of people, especially out in the cyber world, where they are now severely regretting doing that to themselves, and they're scared to death. Like, oh my God, what's inside of me? You know, they're freaking out, you know, as well. They should freak out. And you want to say, hey, look, I was trying to tell you like a long time ago, but you said I was crazy. Yeah. But in a way, I don't want to be like that. That doesn't help the situation. I really, really am not trying to come off that way to anybody, because I feel bad. I feel sad that I couldn't get through to you in particular, whoever it was that I was trying to reach, you know. I feel bad. Because we know we're going to lose a lot of people over the next few years. We know this already. We know it's coming, and that's why the new narratives are coming out about... I heard one yesterday where high protein in your diet messes with the male reproductive juice. So there's a narrative coming to why you can't get your woman pregnant, you know, so that's already starting. It's a little bit, they put that seed out there, and there was, and high protein is leading to heart disease now. So there's that
I
narrative.
saw daylight savings leads to heart disease.
Oh, yeah. I saw that too. I was like, oh, really? Who knew?
Yeah.
So why don't we just go back to not ever changing the clock? Yeah. Will that help? You know, which I always felt like changing the time was stupid anyway. We're not out there in the farm fields and need the daylight.
No, it's just a form of control and to throw us off and mess with our circadian rhythm. Yeah, for sure.
Yes, I have found that I was sleeping in the last couple days. I'm just like, and I've had insomnia for about a year now. I think the most I get sleep at night is maybe 5 or 6 hours.
Oh, wow.
And then I'm exhausted through the day, but you know, you get through it, and then you lay down and try to go to sleep, but now you're wide awake. And so I don't know what I'm going to do. And I refuse to take any pills of any kind. I'm more into a natural, holistic type situation, the CBDs with the THC, but I haven't even been doing that because I feel like I want to stay aware. And I feel like sometimes I feel like the THC CBD combination numbs you a little bit too much.
See, I was thinking, wonder if there's something there for you, because I was thinking when you want to stay aware, or in a way like that, it's something about sleep that doesn't feel safe for you to go into sleep.
Maybe, because they say, like the worst thing is to be woken up in the middle of the night with a bad phone call, or, and that did happen to me. I was 19 and I had just moved in with my boyfriend, and middle of the night in June, my brother was 18, and I heard this banging on my door, and it was like 2 a.m. And and I didn't have a phone yet because the phone company hadn't been out yet. They were due to come out like in 2 days to put the phone in. So my sister was at my door, my older sister, pounding on the door saying, "Get dressed, Jay's in the hospital." And he was my brother, right? And I was like, what is going on? So like you're in this daze and you're thinking, am I having a nightmare? Am I dreaming? What's happening? So then you go to the hospital, and of course my brother didn't make it. He was at a graduation party and things got a little out of control, and somehow he winds up dead. Okay. And we never heard the whole story of what happened. There was a million stories, but none of them collaborated, right? So that happened when I was 19 in the middle of the night. And so I don't know, maybe there's, but I think it's just been this whole thing. That. Thank you. Thank you. He was my buddy, my best friend.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, like when we, speaking about, like that, his soul journey and part of it. And part of that is also not to bypass, because that's what can happen too, right? When people get too spiritual, they don't want to feel their feelings and deal with grief because they're spiritual. You know?
Oh, I went through a dark night then too. Like I'm saying, that might have been maybe my first experience with what that was, but I didn't know what it was. I was 19. I didn't know that because I had built a memorial for him on my dresser and my mirror and pictures and just like a lot of stuff. His letters from his wrestling days, a picture of his grave. I mean, I just went all out there. And I was with a new partner who eventually became the father of my kids. And he says, well, maybe you need to go to speak to somebody about it, And so I did. I tried to see a counselor for a little while, and she just didn't get it. And I didn't know that there were specific counselors that would speak about grief or whatever. Just somebody local in the neighborhood went to see her. And I kept leaving there thinking, you haven't a clue what I'm going through. And of course she couldn't, because that was her profession. And yet she had never experienced it. So that leads me back to thinking, unless someone has gone through it, they haven't a clue what you're talking about or what you're feeling. And this journey that we're all on together now, since we've all been through it together, but have experienced it differently, I don't know. Like some of us are going to make it and some of us are not. And that's it.
Yeah. And I think that's just it. Because in the coaching industry, it's unregulated. It's kind of like the wild, wild west.
Yes, it is, for sure.
But the beautiful part about it is that it is unregulated. Like you can just have a profound experience yourself and transformation yourself, and you can be like, hey, I want to help other people do that, and you can go do it. Right. So I know that good and bad with both, right? Both sides of that, right?
Right. And I know that we're coming up on your time frame here. We've got about 10 minutes left, and you said you had to go. I'm going to keep you on time. Tell our people here, the ones who are listening with us, what can they do to bring them through such a time as a dark night if they feel that they're going through this, and what might help them get through it? And maybe your coaching experience might be a place where they can start to connect with you and start to understand, and maybe you can help them. So what are some things they could start to do? I would typically say that the 2 C's are going to get you
so far, and that is compassion and curiosity.
Oh, I love it. I love that.
And really that, so like compassion for your suffering, because sometimes it's this idea that we gotta like reframe it, push through it, get up. Now we're in that resistance place, right? As opposed to leaning into it.
Okay.
And that's where the curiosity comes in. What is this? Like what, lots of self-inquiry, just being with it, holding compassion for yourself, for your feeling. Yes, you're struggling. Okay. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. I am having a shitty day. Okay. Yes, I'm having a shitty day. I'm having a shitty month, whatever, it
right.
is. And the curiosity to these self-inquisitive kind of questions, what is it right now that is screaming at me that this is not where I want to be? This is not, what does it remind me of
like a self-evaluation?
Just becoming more, curious about why you find yourself here, because there's a reason you are where you are. Mm-hmm. And it's not only the external circumstances. Yes, there can be like grieving or, but
I like that.
Even different people grieve differently. The very first part is realizing it's not the external circumstances that are causing us to feel anything. When I learned that no one can make you feel anything, it was like my mind, it just blew a gasket.
Yeah.
Right? It just shattered, because that was in the middle of my more dark night of the soul. And I heard a talk about no one can make you feel anything, because, you have the same event, different people experience it's completely different, because you are responsible for what you're experiencing. And I just heard it at the right time, and it just really it was profound. So when we can, start to look at that there's a meaning I'm making of this, and this meaning, when did it start? Because pretty much everything you can trace back to childhood or significant sort of traumatic experiences through our adulthood.
Those experiences that come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But change your life, ultimately change your life dramatically sometimes. Those are the times when you just kind of have to hold on for dear life and get through it as best as you can. And I always feel like you have to have a certain circle around you. I love circles. Mm-hmm. Circles have been, and it's weird. Squares, okay. Triangles, okay, whatever. I've just always been into circles, round tables, round whatever. Yeah. I don't know what that means, but if it has a circle in it, I like it. But surround yourself with people who are like-minded, but have different views, because we don't want to always see the same, be the same, hear the same. We want some challenges. Even though we're like-minded, challenge me on something, have an opinion about something.
Expanded, right? You want the people around that you feel expanded around, because they're challenging you.
That's a good word.
In a way that doesn't too much trigger you. Because you don't want to run from our triggers, but at some point, if all they do is trigger you, that can be quite toxic, and that's not challenging in the right ways. But the people that expand you, where you leave a conversation with something that you're like, that was interesting. What was,
let me dig into that. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So you want those kinds of people in your life, absolutely. And this is that part of that dark night of the soul too. It's like, if the people around you aren't your people, that could be part of why you're in the dark night.
We call them your crew or your tribe around here, like our tribe. And then I've recently said our crew, since our theme is very dark and mysterious and kind of mob-like. It's become our crew now. So
I like
wow,
that.
Sara, this has really been enlightening, and it has been interesting, and time has just flown by. So we're going to definitely have to do it again. And there's just so much we could have done on this topic that there's just not enough time in one episode. I would love to have you back sometime and maybe expand on this, or even go into some shadow work.
That is very much key.
Shadow work. I'm just now learning about the shadow side, even though I tell myself, yeah, I know about that. There's just so much to know from experts out there like yourself that have been doing this kind of work with people. And I encourage anyone that has any questions. Sara, how can people reach out and find you? That's what I want to make sure that they know. How can they find you if they're saying, hey, I want to talk to her. Maybe she's got some answers, or, maybe they want to work with you. How can our audience find you?
Yes, I think probably the best way where I'm most active is on Facebook.
Okay.
Either my personal profile, I post the most there, which is just Sara.hallber. Hopefully I show up there. Or
I'm going to put a link up too on my, when I upload the episode, your link will definitely be there so people could click on it. But I just wondered if there was anywhere besides, say, the Facebook or...
I am also on Instagram, but my account is
oh no!
Shadow. It has some restrictions on it.
You got shadow banned.
Yeah, it's weird. People can't tag me. I go against the community.
Do you have an email? Maybe you have an email you can tell them.
Yeah, we could. Sara.hallber.coach@gmail.com.
Very good, and I have that in mind, so I'll go ahead and definitely share that with the audience as well. Sara, it's been a pleasure today. I'm going to let you get on with the rest of your day. We finished 2 minutes prior to what you asked, and so
it has. Fun. I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure, and we will talk again really, really soon. You enjoy the rest of your week.
Yes, you too.
Thank you, hon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was an amazing conversation with Miss Hallberg, Sara Hallberg. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and we look forward to having her back on future episodes for sure. If you'd like to contact her, you can find her link in the description. So we've reached the end of my favorite part of the show, the quote of the day. As highly sensitive empaths, we are particularly prone to experiencing the dark night of the soul. The less defined our sense of self is, and the more toxic energy we take on from others, the more we are prone to losing touch with our souls. And that's by Alethea Luna in her book, Awakened Empath, The Ultimate Guide to Emotional, Psychological, and Spiritual Healing. As we come to the end of the show today, I hope I've enticed your mind just a little bit. Maybe you're asking yourself a few new questions, or maybe found an answer to some. I'd love to hear your thoughts as to what you may have received out of the show today and what dark areas you'd like to explore here on future episodes. I look forward to diving deep into many more topics with you and dissecting many more fascinating human experiences. For more info, please check us out on our site. Again, it's tdsothc.com. And if you like what we're bringing you, consider supporting the show on patreon.com/tdsothc. And as always, remember to hit that subscribe button on your way out so you'll get notified of new episodes. And remember, if today has you feeling anxious, confused, triggered, or even a little weary, take a moment right now to quiet your mind and just breathe. Let go of all your distractions. Embrace mindfulness. Focus your intentions on what you really want. Clarify and let go of that which no longer serves you. Remember, your determination is your power and your peace to realize your true purpose, as these brief but mindful moments can allow a new path to arise. So till next time, walk in the light on the dark side, right here where your vibe attracts your tribe.